So I want to thank everyone. Welcome you to our full task force meeting. My name is Monty Monash, and I'll be facilitating today, as well as on the back end, folks on my team are Adria Anderson and Rachel Kendrick. So with that, I just want to give a greetings, and we can go to the next slide. We have a full agenda. Next slide, please, Adria. Great. Continue. So as we do with all of our task force meetings, I just want to give a brief summary of where we are and how we got established. This was established in September 2021 by the city administrator. This particular task force reports to the Deputy Mayor of Operations and Infrastructure, also known as DMWA. DC Water and DOEE are the co-chairs, and so that's Director Gaddis for DC Water, and CEO Gaddis from DC Water, and Director Tommy Wells from DOEE. This convening was kicked off in November of 2021, which seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't. The flood task force members are made up of 13 DC agencies, as well as 16 consulting members, which is the consulting members are comprised of federal and public partners. All the proceedings that we are doing with this task force, whether they be full task force meetings or action team meetings, are recorded, and they are also available in archival form with minutes on our website, which is dcfloodtaskforce.org, and that is dcfloodtaskforce.org. We will have separate public listening sessions, and these are going to start later this month. Next slide, please. So we've divided up the work to make it more just so that we can get into the details better, into 2 action teams, and those 2 action teams cover 9 categories of discussion. The first of the 2 is residential resilience. They cover categories 1 through 4. That's led by DC Water, and the governance and coordination action teams cover categories 5 through 9, and that's led by DOEE. Next slide. So again, the alphabet soup. There are quite a few DC agencies. They're listed here. If you're the public and you need to have a translation of these agencies, we'd be happy to do so. Please reach out to us. Next slide. There are 16 consulting members, again, listed here. Many are public and also federal members. Next slide. So we are here today. This is our full task force meeting. I believe it's our 3rd meeting. And we are continuing to show a lot of progress during our monthly meetings with the action teams. Next slide, please. So we have a schedule that's pretty busy. Every month we do meet, and the full task force meets every other month. So on the third Wednesday of every other month, this full task force convenes. The next meeting will be, that's today. So the next meeting will be in 2 months' time. The action team meetings meet every month, as I said. Residential resilience is on the 2nd Tuesday of the month, and governance and coordination is on the 2nd Friday of every month. We will have a final report of all of the work being done by the task force, and that is due in November 2022. That's coming up, and we will have an action plan for each of the 9 categories that we are working on. And after the final report is submitted and in the books, we will then meet annually to track the progress of the action plan and continue to discuss budgeting and action plan priorities. Next slide, please. So again, all information that you would like to read about or would like to see in terms of our upcoming meetings, they're all on the Flood Task Force website, which is dcfloodtaskforce.org. It's organized by action plan meetings, by meetings, and by resources that we are referencing in our discussions. Next slide, please. So the goals for today's full task force meeting are 1, to discuss a plan for public listening sessions, which we've had a lot of conversations about in our action team meetings. And we're very much looking forward to getting into those, because that's where the public will be able to engage with this conversation with their input, their feedback, and their concerns. The second goal for today is to report out all action team progress. So those two divisions, which is residential resilience and governance and coordination, we're going to report out on all the progress that we've been doing over the last 2 months. And then we will begin discussing the priorities for the task force actions. That will be an action plan, and we'll discuss what that format looks like later in the meeting. Next slide, please. So with that, our opening remarks. I think first up is Mr. Gaddis, CEO Gaddis from DC Water. You're on mute, Mr. Gaddis.
Monty, give me 1 second. I was trying to communicate with Chairman Wells. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. So what we can do,
I can go ahead and get started though. I just needed a second.
Okay. All right.
So,
thank you.
I want to start off by saying thanks everyone for joining, just as Monty did. I won't take up too much of your time because I know we have important work to do this afternoon. As Monty said, we have a full schedule, but I do want to say how pleased I am that things are progressing so well on this critical issue to address flooding and for the future resilience of the district. I know that the action teams have been meeting monthly since the launch of the task force, and their work is really, really driving this effort forward. I want to personally thank all of you who have been participating in those action team meetings, as well as the staff members from DC Water, DOEE, and the other agencies for their support. As I talked about when we first started this is going to take a team to really make this work. And I look forward to the public's engagement as well at the listening sessions later this month. To hear the residents share, I think their experiences, concerns, and ideas will help us deliver much more meaningful and I think practical solutions as well. I hope you all will be able to participate in one or both of those listening sessions that we have coming up. So again, I just want to thank everyone and truly appreciate you all, and especially the DC Water team and Monty and also DOEE for the efforts that they're putting into this. So thank you all very much for allowing me to open, Monty.
Thank you, Mr. Gaddis. That's great. Welcome. And I know that we're having some difficulty getting Director Wells on there. Could someone please forward him the actual link? I'm trying to do that, but I'm on my actual desktop, so I can't forward that at the same time because it's going to kick me out of this meeting. So I don't want to get kicked out. So with that, we'll have Mr. Wells come back in. We'll interrupt whatever section we're on so that we can hear a greeting from him. Okay. So we're going to move forward. Next slide, we're going to skip over DOE slide. Okay. And so we have our public listening sessions that we want to talk about. And we have two presenters. We have Apra Wara from DC Water, and we also have Alan Prop from DMWA's office. Apra and Alan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Monty. So as you all have heard, there has been a lot of work and ingenuity placed into this actual task force since kickoff. And again, as Monty mentioned, the inception of this work started well beyond the kickoff and the culmination of this task force. And at every juncture of the conversation, it is the community and the public that's at the heart of these discussions, because that's essentially who we're trying to effectuate as we remain resilient and resistant to climate change that we know is happening. So a part of this process in hearing from the public and the communities that we all serve is a listening session. And what we hope to gather from this listening session is, one, to discuss some of the conversations and some of the ideas that we have brought forth as a task force, but also to hear from the community on what their needs are, their stories when it comes to flooding and wet water events, and how to take care of their homes, their properties, how to remain healthy, safe, and well during a flooding event. All the topics that will come up that we may or may not have thought about when it comes to issues of flooding in the district. So right now we have two public listening session dates confirmed. All of you all should have actually received the advertising for the public listening session. So the first date is March 28th. And that session will be from 11 a.m. to 12:30. And then the second one is March 31st, and that will be an evening session from 6 to 7. They will all be held virtually. We want to make sure that everyone has access and is able to attend and understand the information that is shared. We have asked each of our task force members to not only share the information about the public listening sessions, we are also asking that you all attend, but not even just attend. As we are thinking about the mood that we want to set for the public listening sessions, we want to make sure that we're asking the correct questions, but we also want to make sure that we're listening. And so, our charge as task force leads and as a part of this thinking about how the district will be more resilient in flooding, we want to make sure that our posture is that one of a partnership when it comes to the communities that we serve. So if you all have any thoughts and ideas on how we can continue to have that two-way conversation and that open conversation where we're receiving the feedback that we need to hear, and getting what we need to hear and being able to implement based on what we hear, we are more than happy to take those suggestions from you all. Again, the purpose of the public outreach is to communicate the current action category ideas because a lot has been happening between the actual action teams, but we also want to receive the public insight, the input, and the feedback. And I think that piece is the most important. And I know we only have 2 sessions highlighted now, and as you see on the timeline, this task force will be reporting out. But the hope and the thought is for the future that these conversations, these two-way conversations and advocacy will continue as we start to implement some of the things that will be produced in the final report. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Alan, if there's any more to add.
Yeah, thanks, Opera. You said it better than I could have. So I'll just re-emphasize one portion of that, which is to please commit to, whichever agency or group you're a part of, please share the flyers which we've sent around in any ways that you're able to. So as you'll see in the top bullet here, we have already we're working on email outreach, or we're working on outreach through the website, through the listservs that we are aware of and have access to, and through some of these databases that you see listed here, as well as a WPGC live read and social media within the Demois agency and the Demois cluster. That said, we know we are missing a lot of folks through just this limited list, and these public listening sessions are only as good as the number of folks and the committed number of folks that we get out to them. So this is your kind of official notice and official call to please take the flyer that we've provided and commit to outreach from your agency to as many places as possible, with a particular focus on folks who may be underrepresented or under-reached out to, and with a particular focus to folks who may be affected primarily by flooding, who may live in the floodplains or be kind of on the front lines of those communities. So that can be social media posting, that can be listservs that you have access to. If you have access to more formal media, please let us know so that we can help support that. Final thing I'll emphasize here is that we would prefer to reach out to someone twice than not reach out to someone. So don't worry about redundancy. The more folks hear about this, the better. And through the Demois cluster, we will be formally reaching out to the communications folks in your agencies to be sure to share this. But for those not in the Demois cluster, please, we ask that you take the initiative to share this through the channels that you're able to. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. It's almost like we've created a new French word, Demois. So, we've emphasized it, that it's now in everyone else's hands to kind of help spread the word. So we appreciate that. We're going to move forward to the next slide. We're going to spend a lot of time in this updates from the action teams section. We're going to spend greater than an hour. So there'll be lots of slides. We're going to go through each category and talk about the detail of where we are what kind of discussions we've had, and the progress that we're looking forward to making. So with that, I will ask for Meredith to start. And there's some breaks, some
Monty,
transition slides.
before we jump
Yes?
into this, Director Wells has joined us.
Oh, great, great. Director Wells, do you want to give a little greeting and then we'll get into the updates? So you haven't missed much. We've just gone over a little bit of the how we got here, and we just got a plea for folks to start to promote the public listening session. So that's where we are. So thank you, Director Wells.
Yeah, just my apologies for getting in late, but I think that my goal, at least what I'm shooting for, is that we do enough work to where we're teeing up the next year's budget, that whatever our recommendations are, that we get them into next year's budget. And if we have a legislative agenda, get that teed up. And if we have a regulatory agenda, get that teed up. So hopefully getting that all around the same time as we start building next year's budget. So just keep doing your work and keep going. And this is greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Wells. We appreciate that. So we'll get back to the section of the action team updates. And with that, Meredith, thank you. Can you please get started? And I will interrupt with the transition slides just to bring up the next speaker so you don't have to remember which order you're in. Thank you so much.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Monty. I'm Meredith Upchurch from DOEE, and I'm going to give just an introduction generally of the progress that we've made in our action teams. So starting at the high level, the goal of this task force is to produce a comprehensive action plan on things we need to do to reduce flood risk and protect from flooding. So what we'll be doing is producing action plans, individual action plans for all of these different tasks. To get there, we've got an action plan template, which I'll talk about on the next slide. In these 9 categories, we've identified probably, 50 to 80 actions that can be done. And we've started to group those and evaluate them based on the amount of effort that's needed and the benefit and value we're getting out of each of them. And I'll talk about that in a couple slides. We've identified what actions we can give a green light to right now. So as we work through each of these slides, you'll see some of the items highlighted in green. That's an action that we have green lighted, meaning we're ready to develop an action plan right now. So we're going to get started on that. That's something that maybe is already in progress or something we know we absolutely are going to do. So we want the teams to start working on that. And that's an effort to try to identify what the easier things are so that we can spend our time focusing on these more complex actions, more difficult things to put in place. It's going to take a lot of coordination, a lot of strategizing. We want to hear priorities from the public listening sessions, and we've got to talk a lot about funding schedule and how we implement it. So next slide. So this is the action plan template we have developed, and it is out for comment right now. We've shared it with the action teams last week. We want to get comments back by today so we can just finalize a version and start using that. We're trying to make this simple and straightforward so that it's not a heavy lift to put the plan together, and then the real work is going to come, when the work has to happen. So just, quickly what we've got in these plans, just a description of the problem. We have a focus on equity. We want to have a timeline, a budget, what agency is the lead, what agencies are involved, and then what public outreach elements will be a part of it. And I think, Director Wells, as you mentioned, the legislative and regulatory items that we probably need to also specifically call that out to make sure we've covered that. Next slide, yes. Our action evaluation matrix here, a lot of text here. I'm not going to go into this. I just want everyone to know that as we have been developing these actions, we're trying to evaluate them to see how much level of effort is it going to take? How complex it is? How much time is it going to take? What's the cost of it? And then what benefit are we going to get out of it? You know, is it helping just a few residents or buildings? Is it helping an entire neighborhood? Is it doing something for the whole city? What kind of resilience outcome are we getting from it? Is it going to protect from our 100-year flood, our 500-year flood? You know, what scale are we going to expect? And then what? How does it help vulnerable communities? You know, is it helping them? Is it not helping them? Is it helping other populations? So you'll see these color codes as we show the actions in the next slides, and this is how the color codes correspond. So you can refer back once for everyone on the action team should have everyone on the task force should have copies of this. We provided it to all the action team members, so you can refer back to that. So I think that covers the introduction to the action teams. I will pass back to Monty.
It does. Thank you, Meredith. And if there's any questions, please feel free to speak up, interrupt, raise your hand right in the chat. We're monitoring the chat. So as we continue on, this is the next section is for DISB. So can we go to the next slide, please? So we're going to cover the first category, which is flood and sewer line backup insurance. Someone from DISB on the line?
Sure, this is Philip Barlow.
Hi, Philip.
Hi, Monty. As you can see, following Meredith's little scheme, we have one item that's already been green lighted, that's in green, and that is to conduct outreach to increase the number of flood insured residents in the district. I can tell you that you know, there have been already discussions about things to do. I know we have a flood awareness week, I think, coming up in June, where there will be some activities. We've also had other discussions about events to raise awareness among groups like the insurance agents, realtors and lenders about the importance of flood insurance. So we don't have any finalized plans yet, but there are discussions about a lot of those items. The rest of the items in this action team are really, you know, a lot of them are insurance related, and we believe that it is likely that if we develop some recommendations out of here, they will likely require legislation. We have had a lot of discussions about some of the various alternatives to address to increase the insurance coverage for areas in the flood risk areas, and we are still really in the early stages of discussions about about the magnitude of what we want to try to do, and the methodology of what we want to try to do. And I could probably go into more detail, but it would probably be better for us to. I mean, I get happy to open it up to questions, and can provide more detail if that seems relevant at this point. But I suspect it's probably too early to get into too much detail.
Great, Phil, thank you. Jed, did you have anything, Jed Ross from ORM, did you have anything that you wanted to share about this process? We've had lots of conversations in the action team about it. You actually presented some very interesting information that further engaged the conversation amongst the agencies. So did you want to share anything more?
Thanks, Monty. I think just in general, just getting to a decision point and making some recommendations from the task force about
how we structure those alternative risk methodologies and or building a district program. As discussed amongst the team, and we would potentially need some legislation to give the appropriate authority if it becomes a district government program, and then of course the funding. So, but we do have a solution where we build a captive and we help to provide subsidized coverage for district residents who are at risk. So that is just one solution. There are lots of others, and look forward to, getting to some decision points. I would imagine a follow-up conversation possibly with Director Wells and Director Holmes might be helpful to just kind of close out what we want to do to make sure we're moving in the right direction. But there are a lot more conversations and ideas that we have not fully exhausted that may be more beneficial. And I think that's the work that this group still needs to continue to undertake and are undertaking.
Great, thanks. Are there any questions for Director Ross? Hey, well, thank you. That is funny because in our action teams, the flood insurance has the longest amount of conversation, but today we're going to move quickly through it, which is fine.
I'll just add, Monty, that flood insurance is one of those more complicated topics. Is going to take a lot more discussion and effort. So.
Right. So I think that we've just scratched the surface. And I will say that Jed Ross and his team they're extremely thorough, as is Disby, everyone over at Disby. So we've been really, it's great that we have such talented people working on these agencies that are thinking about something that's creative, that's different, that we'll probably be creating something new. So, all right. Well, thank you. So we're going to move on to the next slide. We're going to go to category 2, which is repair flood damage in low-income homes in neighborhoods. And that's for Misia from HCMA. And if there's anyone else that's going to be speaking with her.
Thank you so much, Monty. So HCMA, we are the lead for category 2 repair flood damage in low-income homes and neighborhoods. I know we've had some deep conversations about how this would work. I definitely think our next step is really utilizing the public listening sessions that are in play this month to really understand some of the potential needs. We kind of have laid it out on the screen, potential ways that if there was a program to exist in this way, how it will be structured. However, I think it's really important to, and I know this task force agrees, is to have those listening sessions as our agency in September 10th, canvassing the 200 plus homes that were impacted by that flood event. Just hearing the different needs was greatly important and will help us build out a better understanding of how this program will be implemented, if it's through a connection with category 1, which Philip had shared some of the initial understanding of this potential insurance option. But our agency, with the coordination of other agencies, have been just understanding what existing resources are out there. And as we can share, there is the initial needs. That's something where right now different agencies have more so understanding of long-term needs that category 3 will probably provide more understanding on. So I think these public listening sessions will be greatly important to build out a better understanding of category 2 and how we can directly support residents. But I'll open it up for questions and any follow-ups to other members of the task force. Well, Monty, we're moving pretty fast.
No, I'm just thinking we become highly efficient. Like we have it all down. I think that what's important for everyone to think about is that as we move through the categories, the suggestion of a green light is there, but you're welcome to say, hey, from another perspective of other members that are on the call today, since it's the full task force, you might know of something that is in the works, that's ready to go, that should be considered as green light because you have some knowledge about what you're working on. So please consider that. This is not done work. It's not finished work. It's in progress. So this is, we're reporting out, but it doesn't mean that it's a final thing. We're just trying to make sure a check-in so that we can keep capturing everyone's information and ideas as we go along. So with that, we will go to the next slide. Thank you, Vermesia. We're going to move on to category 3. I'm sorry. Yes, category 3. Flood-proof individual homes and facilities. This is led by DOEE. So I believe that is Martin Koch.
Real quick, Monty, there looks like there is a comment in the chat from Imania Price asking, have we looked at how DCRA's single family residential rehabilitation program, SFRRP, works as a template or best practices for the residential flood program?
Great. We'll go back one slide or to category 2 and have Vermesia respond.
Yes, that is a part of our existing resources that we were looking at and understanding how that program works. As I believe was shared about a few months ago about the program and how that initial need, right, when a flooding event happens, this category 2 will get to that kind of nature where dealing with remediation. So definitely is a program that we want to make sure that we are understanding how we can utilize one another should the structure of category 2 be more of a stopgap potential program. So yes, thank you so much. I was about to put something in the chat, but it's good that I'm able to just say it over line. So thank you for that.
This is Chris
Great.
Bailey over at DCRA. I just wanted to help out with anything that's been talked about so far, just with DCRA's in terms of access, use, and requiring certain permits. Whenever there's an emergency, such as flooding, the homeowner themselves do have the ability to correct and help get through that process by allowing that work, any type of repair, to happen without a permit until they can get the design professionals involved and get the repairs actually on paper. We understand during some of these emergencies that you're worried about flooding, not about creating documents to get the work done. But we do allow for emergency work to be conducted, and especially if it's involving the structural integrity of the building. I could go into much more detail of some of the requirements that emergency construction allows, but I think we'll address that later in some of the working groups.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Vermesia. And great question. Okay, so we'll go on to the next category, category 3, and we'll bring up Martin from DOE. Martin?
Thanks. So for this category, I'll focus on 3.1, developing a program to flood-proof homes and provide resilience upgrades. DOEE is starting to address this through our Flood Smart Homes program. The overall goal of Flood Smart Homes is to make each residential structure in the 100-year and 500-year floodplains flood protected. However, due to the wide variety of residential structures in DC's floodplains, the first immediate step in this effort is to conduct resilience assessments to collect data regarding each property and identify the most feasible and cost-effective measures for each home. Below, you can see examples of certain retrofit measures. You can see a flood vent, the purpose of which is to equalize hydrostatic pressure during a flood and prevent the collapse of a crawl space. In the center, you can see an air conditioning unit mounted on a cantilever platform. This ensures that the AC unit is safely above the design flood elevation. And on the right, you can see an entire home being elevated. So you can see that there's a wide range of potential measures with different levels of cost and benefit. So it's important to understand the particular characteristics of each property to choose the best measure. Next slide, please. Social equity is a key goal for the Flood Smart Homes program. This map shows residential buildings in the 100-year floodplain, outlined in red for high risk, and residential buildings in the 500-year floodplain. You can see that these structures at risk of flooding are not necessarily distributed equally throughout the district. They are concentrated in specific frontline communities. Next slide, please. Specifically, of the approximately 1,000 homes in either the 100-year or the 500-year floodplain, the majority of those homes are in wards 6, 7, and 8. Specifically for the 100-year floodplain, and just for context, a home in the 100-year floodplain has a 1 in 4 chance of experiencing flood damage during the course of a 30-year mortgage. Over 90% of those homes are located in wards 7 and 8, which have an existing high social vulnerability index. Next slide, please. The most common type of residential building in DC's floodplains is a single-family home. About 72% of the residential buildings in DC floodplains are single-family homes. Of those single-family homes, 98% are located in just 2 wards, wards 7 and 8. And in the 500-year floodplain, 82% of single-family homes in the floodplain are in those wards. Next slide. To help remedy this situation, the first step is a residential resilience assessment. The goal of the Flood Smart Homes program is for DOEE to hire a contractor to visit each participating home, identify the existing conditions, and identify the most cost-effective retrofit measures at each property. The deliverables for the participating resident will include a cost estimate of each retrofit measure, a benefit cost analysis report that's eligible to be used in a FEMA Hazard Mitigation Assistance grant application, a detailed residential resilience report that outlines specific characteristics of each property, such as the foundation type, location of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment, and any conditions that might be relevant for an HMA grant application. Finally, the resident will also receive an elevation certificate certified by a professional surveyor or a professional engineer. This document can be provided to FEMA to help reduce the flood insurance costs at a property. Next slide. Options that the contractor will consider when performing the assessment at each property include light utility work, such as anchoring hot water heaters to prevent them from floating away and potentially severing a gas line, installing ground fault circuit interrupter outlets below the design flood elevation to reduce the risk of electrocution during a flood, sealing HVAC ducts to prevent the growth of mold in case of water damage, and deployable flood barriers, which can form a barrier around a home to prevent water intrusion. The contractor will also consider heavy utility work items, such as installing a backflow prevention valve on the main sewer line, installing a new sump pump or upgrading existing sump pumps, elevating electrical equipment to reduce the risk of electrocution and to prevent further damage from loss of utilities after a flood. The contractor will also consider structural work, such as installing flood vents in a crawl space to equalize hydrostatic pressure, performing a complete wet flood proofing of areas below the design flood elevation, filling in a basement, which can prevent collapse due to hydrostatic pressure and lower flood insurance premiums, or even performing a whole home elevation or mitigation reconstruction. Next slide. You can see that these potential options have a wide range of potential costs. The initial resilience assessment will be performed at no cost to the homeowner. The homeowner can then use that data from the resilience assessment to analyze which of these measures would work best considering their unique home and their unique financial circumstances. This resilience assessment is a $3,750 approximate value, and that will be provided free of charge. The homeowner can then consider whether it would be worth investing in a sump pump, wet floodproofing, backwater valves, these cost-effective options that cost less than $10,000. The homeowner could also consider something like elevation of electrical equipment, deployable flood barriers, or even consider applying for a FEMA hazard mitigation grant for a complete home elevation. That resilience assessment is the first step in the process for empowering homeowners to know which options are right for their unique home. Next slide. We have already begun outreach to identify interested homeowners. Right now we have 42 homeowners who have indicated that they are already interested in receiving an assessment. The next step is we aim to hire a contractor to begin going out in the field and performing the assessments. Later stages will include planning for a design build phase, where we will use the data from the assessments to start to perform physical retrofit measures at participating homes. To help fund this work, we aim to leverage the data collected from the assessments to apply for hazard mitigation assistance funding from FEMA. Ultimately, we hope that the project will become self-sustaining and that we will continue to acquire further funding until the risk to all homes in the designated floodplains is mitigated.
Martin,
Yes.
question. Martin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Question. So what is the context for this? If I'm a homeowner looking at this, I'm going to wonder, if I make these improvements, how long are they good for? So the context of that, is how is my situation going to change in a decade, or if sea level rises another foot? Or I'm just curious, sort of, what the environmental context we're going to offer the public is for them to make these kinds of decisions.
That's a good point. The contractor will consider the durability and the operations and maintenance of particular measures. For instance, once a home is elevated, that's a permanent change to the foundation, which will result in a long-term reduction in flood risk. We also are working on the integrated flood model. We're working on proposed updated flood hazard rules, and these will take into account climate-informed data to help property owners understand their current risk as well as their risk in the future.
Yeah, does that answer your question, Sil?
Yeah.
We have to start at the baseline we have now, and then
Mhm.
we build from that. I also want to add that in today's announcement from the mayor of her proposed FY23 budget, there is a $2.6 million proposed funding for this Flood Smart Homes program. So we are very excited about that and hoping that gets adopted.
Hey Martin, we had two questions pop up in the chat. The first one is anyone exploring the potential design of a buyout program?
Interesting. We have not explored the potential design of a buyout program due to community feedback. Many community members want to stay in their homes, pass on generational wealth. So we're looking at measures that can reduce the risk at a home while allowing the homeowner to stay in that location.
And the next question is this only for residents in the floodplain or also flood-prone areas as well?
Currently, we are prioritizing homes in the 100-year floodplain, at the zone with a 1% annual chance of flooding in any given year. As further funding becomes available, we might consider expanding it to other flood-prone areas.
Hey, Martin, do you have any more slides or anything else to add to your presentation?
No? Does anyone have any further questions?
All right. Well, thank you so much. There's a lot going on. DOE is doing their part, building out programs that will hopefully be helpful to the residents, and that's the intention. So thank you for the thoughtful presentation there and getting us up to speed. Okay, so we're on
Thanks.
category 4, and we're going to talk about the sewer line backups and backwater valve installation. These are great pictures. Enjoy them. It's a nightmare if you have a flood, but it's, you know, so that's what we're going to talk about now. So can I please have, that's Salil to speak to these slides. Salil,
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks.
And Martin, great presentation previously. That picture certainly is a motivator. So these were some of, let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So we had early on identified some projects that we could work on, and they've all been green lighted. But the key, and I'm just going to go off script for a second. In the few months we've started working on this, the huge advantage is not these list of 100-odd projects that we've identified. Those are important, but what this task force has created is an ability and a forum for agencies to talk to each other and find out what's happening in each agency. And that's been a huge plus, trying to understand what work's being done so there's no duplication, or if some work has been done in one agency, they can lend hand to the other agencies. We've done this before. Here's what happened. Here's how we can help out. So that's just having those discussions at the action team and post-action team have been very helpful. Next slide, please. All right, another one. Great. Pictures worth 1,000 words. So backwater valve. I'm not sure, and if somebody on this call are very familiar with it, pardon the repetition, but basically, if you have a basement and you have a top of a manhole, upstream manhole that's above the floor of your basement, you almost always need a backwater valve because sewer systems will surcharge, whether it's a combination of grease that was dumped down the pipe that combined with rags that shouldn't have been there but are there, we know, or if it's just rainwater getting in through area drains, roof drains that again shouldn't be there but are there. So sewers will periodically back up all the way to the manhole, and which is why you need a backwater valve. The reason it says almost is in rare cases you have homes that are up on a hill with the sewer line in the street. For homes such as that, you don't need a backwater valve, but otherwise you always do. And this is a building code in DC. You know, Chris Bailey's on the line and he can explain it, but if you have a home with a fixture that's below the top of the manhole, you need a backwater valve. Now it's, when you're retrofitting a house, before you plan out the basement, before you bring the architect in, it's a lot easier to find out where the backwater valve should go, plan for it so you can leave the space open for maintenance. To do it after the fact, it's possible, but it gets to be a little harder. Next picture. Next slide, please. So, current homes without backwater valves. What are the options? One of the things we find out is folks, especially ones that have bought into the housing, don't know if they have or don't have a backwater valve. Sometimes they do have a backwater valve, it's just been carpeted over and they don't know it's out there. So the step one is to verify if you have a backwater valve. Now, backwater valves do have periodic maintenance requirements. It's not onerous. It's just a matter of removing the top and making sure there's nothing clogging it. But there is some maintenance requirement. So it's always nice to know if you have a backwater valve in your home. And this brings back to a topic that we've talked about is public information. Getting this information out to the public so that they know that it's required, they know to look for one and how to maintain it. If you don't have a backwater valve and you need one, contact the plumber. The plumber will come in and install one. Now, we've got a lot of applications for backwater valves. We can't approve all of them and have them paid. There are a couple of conditions under which we do pay for them. One is there's a specific area within the combined sewer area that was a negotiated discussion that we would pay for backwater valves. That's in the Bloomingdale area and a few adjacent areas. It was expanded after the September 10th, 2020 storm for homes that documented flooding in that storm. So those are the two conditions under which DC Water will supply a backwater valve and install it. Next slide. So what do we do for the other homes? What are the options? First one, right off the bat, is code reinforcement. Helping DCRA, working with them to put some teeth in it so that retrofits that get done don't skirt this requirement. Another option is when a person does a real estate transfer, have a disclosure requirement, whether you have a backwater valve or you don't have a backwater valve, so that the buyer is aware of this. And the last two are programs that have been tried in other parts of the country. One is a partial incentive, not a full payment, but it defraying some of the costs of installing a backwater valve. And the last one is income-based grants. Now, we're working with HCMA, DOE, to actually pursue some of these grants as part of this program. Next slide. Yeah, that was the last one. Any questions? Thank you. Haven't seen anything
Thanks,
come up in the
Salil.
chat. All right.
No, I don't see anything in the chat that's for your questions. So thank you, Salil. You know, this was actually a really good primer on how that backwater valve program works with DC Water. Do you know how many folks have signed up for that to date? Residents?
Gosh, we're over 300 or 400.
Oh, great. Great. So it's being accessed and people are using it. That's great. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide if there's no other questions. All right. So governance and coordination cover category 5 and
Monty, there was a
it's
question that
flood-
just popped up in the chat.
oh, sorry.
Um,
Yeah, great.
No, and how much does it cost? Oh, it started off around 2,500. We are now up to like 5,400. But it also depends on the location within the home. It's least expensive if you do it at the time of retrofit. And how many homes need them? That's going to be part of the task force to look at across the city. Good questions.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. We'll go to the next slide. So category 5 is flood mitigation infrastructure projects, and that is Alan up from DEMWA.
Yeah, thank you. You can go ahead to the next slide. So this has been a big focus for those of you who attend the governance and coordination meetings. This has been a really big focus for drilling down into this list of capital projects, because we've known that this is something we need to do. It's something that there's no reason to wait on doing, and so that's been a big focus. of our past few meetings. Basically, the goal here is going to be to, number one, develop this list of capital projects. And then number two, start to prioritize them based on a number of factors, which we've talked about here. And you can see a few of them here in terms of overall effort and benefit and value, but we'll be able to drill in a little bit more specifically once we have to actually prioritize each project against one another. So we've done a really good job, I think, of starting that list of projects. I don't think it is final yet. You know, there will probably be a few more that trickle in, particularly after we've had these public outreach meetings. But you can see that initial list here. Thanks for changing the slide. So step one within the governance and coordination group meetings has been to develop this list. And we've assigned lead agencies and have some rough statuses for most of them. Step two, which we are on right now, is to develop a rough cost estimate for each of these projects. So we want to basically, the high level goal is to bucket these projects in a cost range. So, you know, is this a less than $10 million project? Is this 10 to 25, 25 to 50, et cetera, et cetera. And so that will allow us to get an overall rough range of how much is completing these capital projects as a whole going to cost the district. And ideally, we can break that down year over year, fiscal year over fiscal year. And then the next step beyond that, oh, and we can move to the next slide just to show a quick primer on what are the funding sources we're initially thinking of. So Meredith did a great job of putting together this kind of initial list of funding sources that we are aware of that can help to support a lot of these capital projects. So our goal is going to be that to then match this overall, you know, this is what the capital projects are going to cost with, you know, these are the funding sources that we can use to cover those costs. And we would anticipate there being a gap between what we need and the funding sources we're aware of that will be able to take care of those projects. And so that will lead us ultimately to a probable step three, which if you can go back a couple of slides. Sorry, I know that's not ideal, but these kind of last 5.2 and 5.3, securing funding for infrastructure projects, we can't do that until we know roughly what the scale of that gap is going to be. And then that can help inform how we go about getting a new funding source or using local budget to get more competitive grants in. So just to summarize that overall, right now we are at the stage where we've got a really solid list of capital projects. We're developing the rough funding estimates for those capital projects, and we are simultaneously looking, and then we're going to start looking at, you know, what are the additional funding sources we might need to develop ourselves to cover any gap there. That pretty much covers category 5. Any questions or, you know, Meredith, anyone additions that I've missed here?
That was a great summary presentation. I guess I'll add that we've asked all the agencies to continue adding to these lists, you know, add the projects, add funding sources. So you know, we'll put that out for everyone. We're looking to make sure we have the good world of projects captured and funding sources captured.
And to Meredith's point, the reason for the big ask is so that we can make sure that we're competitive for some of these federal grants that are coming out through IIJA and other infrastructure type project funding. So the list that we compile here will help us to identify what we need to get ready for. And that will help us to write for these competitive grants to actually win them. So the sooner we know what we're up against or what we're looking forward to, the better, then we can be ready. So so please send that information back. I guess, Alan, you're the point of contact on that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, you can send that to me.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions? Anything in the chat that I've missed, maybe? I don't think so. So we'll go to the next. We are zooming through this. Everyone might get a whole hour back in their day at this rate. So next, yes.
Sorry, Stephanie. A question just popped in the chat, and I want to make sure it gets covered before we move on. Is there also an effort to incorporate resilience into other proposed projects?
I think we would need to know what the questioner is asking what resilience means. I guess if that means flood protection, then new projects do have to meet flood regulations. Do others have can others elaborate?
Stephanie, I don't see the question in the chat. Who asked the question, and maybe they can come off mute and just speak to it.
Yeah, hold on one second. Because it looking at it, it seems to have come just to me. So it was from Miss Sarah Edwards, and I believe she should be able to unmute herself now. And Miss Edwards, if you'd like to clarify.
Hi, yes, thanks. And sorry for asking a somewhat confusing question. I was just wondering if, as the district invests in other capital improvement projects, to what extent resilience or flood protection is incorporated. And Meredith, your response to the flood regulations being a part of that answers it. But I'm also thinking about like the resilient design guidelines and, you know, kind of the next step of that process.
I think all agencies are adopting some approach to resilient design. So it's hard to speak specifically to individual projects, but I know that that is a priority I'm hearing about in lots of projects.
Great. Hopefully that answers your question, Ms. Edwards. And if not, we'd be great. I see it does. Are there any other questions? Yeah, so really the purpose of this task force is to bring together the agencies that would be concerned with this flood issue, flood resiliency, and as we know that DOE is shepherding that effort across the district. So we are definitely thinking about resiliency as an effort, as a priority. So thanks for bringing that up. Are there any other questions? And if not, we'll move on to the next slide. All right, great. Thank you. So category 6, regulations, legislation, compliance, and permitting. So we have here DCRA and DOEE. So that'll be, I'm not sure who from DCRA, maybe it's who would like to speak to this, but Meredith, you're also
up. And then Chris Bailey
yeah.
can add on as you want. Chris, I think you're still on. Yeah, so you can see under this category, we've got several items we can greenlight, efforts already in progress. So DOE has been working for a couple of years now to update the flood hazard rules to expand regulation to the 500-year floodplain, also add in some buffer for sea level rise that's expected. So that's in progress. I think we're working towards a draft issuance of those regs sometime this year. So we are moving ahead with that. Also with item 6.3 on this list, there has been a Flood Resilience Act introduced by council, which actually enables DOE to have the authority to promulgate the regulations to regulate the 500-year floodplain. As well as authorization to require flood insurance, although there's no intention at this time to require flood insurance on new or major substantial projects. So those are two items that DOE is pushing ahead.
Thank you, Meredith. And I could speak to the remainder, just to where we are in some of the back and forth and some of the communications that DCRA and DOE have had, is to just look at the application intakes, our records, identifying where and how projects in the district actually come, and we can actually catalog them, find out who they are, find out the addresses. if there was any substantial improvement or work done, so that we can then implement, record, or even direct them to do some of the things that we're trying to protect in terms of their property. So generating the list was first, finding out those individual buildings, not just residents, but all structures in the floodplain, flood hazard areas, I should say. And then move forward with identifying, what is a required permit review by DOEE in order to make sure that they're doing what they're said that they're doing, and they mitigate it properly. Next, that would be 6.6. 6.7. It's one of the things that I've pointed out, that DCRA actually is only have jurisdiction on DC owned property. Whenever it's a federal owned property, we do have the ability, if it is a private entity on that federal property. But if it's not if it's a solely owned and operated federal property, DCRA doesn't have that jurisdiction. But there are a few that are either owned by the district or owned by the federal and then occupied by IDA. So that does follow in our little purview. So if there's any questions on the compliance, I've addressed a couple things that I may can elaborate on if there's a question. Okay.
Okay, that's all we have as an update on this section.
Great. You guys are really going through this very quickly, which is great. So we'll move on to category 7, which is mapping and modeling. I know that's DC Water and DOE, so that's Salil and Meredith. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll start off on this. A few items here that we've given a green light to. Actually, first off, I want to mention, I think a lot of people have heard about the integrated flood model that DOEE has been in progress to launch for a few years now. Happy to report that the contract has been awarded. We actually had a kickoff meeting earlier today, so that project is underway. And as it progresses, we look forward to being able to report the progress from that effort. So that's been a long time coming. The two items here, 7.3 and 7.4, that we are greenlighting are updated flood maps. That's for the Watts Branch area and the Oxen Run area. And what that is U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has done detailed modeling with updated elevation data. And so we've got updated model data that actually refines the floodplain for those areas. So what we're finding is there will be some properties that will be taken out of the floodplain, which is great news for those properties, means flood insurance rates will be less, their risk is actually less. And so there's a process now that the modeling is done that we have to go through with FEMA to actually get the map revised. It's a letter of map revision. So we're greenlighting that effort to get those letter of map revisions done. So that's great news. And then the other item, 7.7, creating a standard procedure to document floods and affected buildings after they occur. That is a procedure that is falls under FEMA guidelines. And so we just need to make that procedure work and document what we need to do within the district when that happens. And so our team is already started to work on that. So we'll put together an action plan on how that will be done. Salil, would you like to add on?
A great job covering this, and I'm really happy to see that kickoff on the IFM. That's going to be a huge game changer for the city. When I did my spiel in the beginning for Backwater Valves, I talked about the benefit of this task force and being able to talk to different agencies. As a classic case with the network of stream gauges, rain gauges, because there's different agencies already underway doing some of that work. So what this task force allowed us to do is just, rather than duplicating effort, just connect with them and make sure we can use the data that comes off it. So that's been a big help. I think it's all underway from that point of view. Thank you.
That's it for mapping and
Great.
modeling. Any questions?
There's something in the chat. I just saw something pop up. Maybe it's an old one.
Unless it's just you, Salil, it might be an old one.
Might be.
All right, so we'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Meredith and Salil. So category 8, as we wind down with our categories, flood mitigation planning and coordination. DMWA, so that's you again, Alan.
Yes, we can go to the next slide. And I know we're going quickly, but I think this is going to be a quick one as well. Basically, this is just about interagency coordination and outreach on flood mitigation. The first one is something that we are already working on and have reached out to the DC Silver Jackets to basically pull in additional district agencies and update the MOU to include them as signatories. So we've reached out, they're on board with it. It's just a matter of updating the MOU and officially pulling additional agencies in. But that's really critical for those, who don't know. DC or the Silver Jackets are a national organization that have different local chapters, and the DC chapter brings together federal, state, local government actors to kind of collaborate and information share when it comes to flood resilience planning and mitigation. So this is going to be really critical in just making clear lines of communication between different district agencies with our partners outside of the government. And then we still have a couple of actions, 8.2 and 8.3, which are going to be further out, and lead agency still TBD, just on formalizing the DC Drainage Committee, and then documenting maintenance responsibilities for flood risk infrastructure. And then 8.4 on outreach is something DOE is already doing, has been doing, and will continue to consistently do, which is conducting yearly interagency outreach on flood risk and the programs available to reduce and mitigate, and then talking about flood insurance. Anything folks would add there before we move on from this category? All right. Well, I think we can go through this one now. Thanks.
All right, great, Alan. Thank you. No questions in the chat, so we'll keep going forward. This is our last category that we've been working on, which is flood emergency planning, response, and recovery. And this is for Misia.
Hi there, everyone. Monty. Yes, thank you so much. Actually, I'm just part one of this. So I see DC Water has a project that's underway. Do you mind going to the next slide? Because we do have a couple of updates. So essentially, we were providing an update to this group on some of the work that we have been doing thus far on one of the potential actions, which is developing and installing flashing warning signs. Essentially, this slide kind of gives you a really quick snapshot at what we're trying to do, where we are looking to install those, who are the coordination agencies that are assisting us. Essentially, this is a multi-agency project with the Department of Transportation and DOE and our agency HSEMA. This information was led by DDOT. Essentially, they had done some flood assessments in the last year or so where they had identified 8 locations. And these potential 8 locations, and I would defer to DDOT on more information on that. They were actually submitted in budget enhancements. However, were not selected. So through the process, DOE and HSEMA, we're trying to leverage some of the hazard mitigation assistance funding that is coming to the district through hazard mitigation assistance COVID funding, which we had shared in a couple of meetings ago about this funding that has been released to states and the district. So essentially, we're looking to install high water warning systems in 8 of these locations. We're doing site visits as in the last couple of weeks, just identifying, understanding the needs. I think Salil had brought up some great points about the importance of this task group, because we actually had 2 meetings this week just to understand, yes, we want to put flashing warning signs in these high profile areas. However, what's the best way of doing that? And DC Water provides some lessons learned about how we can approach that. And then also thinking through essentially, are we piloting a few of these, or should we install all 8 at the same time? So we're still in that early stages of this project. However, we're excited that we're collaborating with different agency partners to really take things that are happening in response that we're seeing where there are high priority areas, and actually implementing projects through the task force. So a conversation that could have taken a couple of months took a week through the task force, because we were able to connect and make sure we're not duplicating efforts, and that we're not looking at we're looking at a project in the most effective way. So essentially, this project is still underway. We'll have more to share as we continue these site visits with DDOT at the table, and HCMA and DOE supporting. So that's one of the projects. Do you mind going to the next slide, where we also are working with Department of Transportation, excuse me for the acronym, that's the right-of-way sensors. This project has evolved since I created the slide deck. But essentially, the thought was through the work of DOE, we were looking at locations to have flood sensors near some of the right-of-ways that DDOT has under their portfolio. But we realized through this week that there's actually existing work that's being done from USGS. So they're looking to put about 30 or so location sensors in Watts Branch. So we're really just trying to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, and that we're really providing, looking at this project in a holistic way. So we appreciate the task force for helping us kind of think through the locations. So as I stated here, they're not defined, but those are the 3 circles shared with you on the screen shows you that these are some potential priority areas. So I'll stop here, because I realize that when you share, you get more information, and I would love if anyone has any additional information that they could share about some of this project, so we can continue to make grounds. But we're pretty excited about the fast moving pace of this project, in the sense that we could install these within this year. It could be a great accomplishment for the task force, but then also the corrective actions that we're learning real time, like just yesterday, that we're now implementing into making this project implementing this project in the most efficient way. So any additional feedback will be great, so that we can make sure that we are not duplicating efforts. So I feel like you have something else, you have something to say.
No, this is, you covered this very well. And I think this cooperative approach is really going to help us out.
I feel like we've rehearsed this, right? I mean, it's just, this is the best performance of all the presentations. Truly, what you said, Vermecia, about having this task force convened has really streamlined some of the individual agency, conversations, which could have taken a month or 2 or more. Is now, it's just direct communication, and you can get it kind of talk through and up or down right away. So thank you for acknowledging that. And I think that lots of the members on this task force would agree with the same statement. Are there any questions, anything that folks want to write in the chat, or just come off mute and share or ask? All right. Well, it looks like there's some movement here, definitely in category 9. lots of green lights and some significant activity. So we look forward to the success of that when you report it out in months to come. So thanks, Ramicia. All right, so we are winding down. Looks like we're going to have a lot more time to give back to everybody. As usual, we always kind of end our meetings with Meredith giving us some next steps and some homework. Hopefully, we will have back Nick Barnard, who is a part of DOE as well, as he's been away, so you don't hear him on the call today. But he's doing his civic duty, right? Doing jury duty. So, Meredith.
Next slide. We're not going to give homework out today. We give homework to all our action teams. Today it'll just be reminders, which could be considered homework. So first off, we talked about the public listening sessions earlier in the meeting. We just want to request that everybody send that out to your email lists, social media, whatever forums you have to get the word out on that. If you have not received the flyers, because we've got it in every forum you could possibly imagine, a PDF, a Twitter forum, a Facebook forum, something else, we will send that to you. You can use this email down on the third bullet, dcfloodtaskforce@dc.gov, or send it to any of the individuals who've been talking today, and we can get you those files. Okay, second bullet, reminder that we have the website, and that is the repository for all information, presentations, meeting minutes, videos of past meetings. The source reference documents are all there. For task force members, we have email lists. You should be getting emails from DC Flood Task Force about these meetings and follow-ups. If you're not getting those emails, please send a request to that email. I know people are leaving, new people are starting, so we need help keeping our email lists fresh and up to date. So please let us know. And if you want to be on the action team meetings and you're not getting those notices, also let us know and we can get you added to those lists. So that's all the reminders.
Right, Meredith, there's one correction there. It's the dcfloodtaskforce.org. So the second listing says gov. It's .org, just to make sure everyone knows that.
Well, no. The email is dc.gov. The website
So sorry.
is org.
Okay, perfect. I'm so sorry. I apologize. So then,
yes,
don't want to
the
be
email
confusing.
is dc.gov. Yes.
Great. That is confusing, but it is different. Okay, great. All right,
Actually,
next slide.
There may also be an email that goes to the website, so that may also be right. I don't know.
Whatever's on this slide is correct. That's what's right. All right. So thank you, Meredith. And so we're going to close out. Just a reminder on upcoming meetings. We have our first public listening session on March 28th. We have 2 different times for the public listening session so that we can capture as much availability from our public and whatever their schedule might be. So we have one from 11 a.m. to 12:30. We have our second one on the 31st of March, the end of the month, at 6 p.m. to 7:30. So all task force members are welcome and encouraged to join those calls so that you can hear public input and feedback directly, so that when we engage in our next task force meetings and action team meetings, we can use that information to kind of continue to guide us on where we want to be when we complete these reports. So the next full task force meeting is on May 18th. And then we have our residential resilience action team meeting, our monthly meeting, on April 12th. And we have our governance and coordination monthly meeting on April 15th. I'm sorry, that one's going to be rescheduled because it is a holiday. That's Emancipation Day. So we are going to change that date. So please, for the next governance and coordination meeting, it will not be on the regular schedule. We will announce a new date just after we have those public listening sessions, okay? So, and everything is going to be on WebEx except for the public listening sessions. They will be on a Microsoft Teams platform, so that is different. So when you see the notification, please be mindful that it's Microsoft Teams for public listening sessions, not WebEx. Thank you. Next slide, please. So with that, if we still have Director Wells and CEO Gaddis on the line, if you'd like to share some closing remarks from today's meetings, now's the time to do so.
Okay, I'm here. I don't know if David Gaddis is here. Mr. General Manager, are you here?
David is not on the call right now, but Lisa
Okay.
Barton is.
So I'm here, just that I'm reassured this is really efficient. Monty, you're doing a great job, and everyone else that's working through the committees are doing a great job. This is very efficient, and I think we're on track. This is incredibly important work. I do want to shout out again to my friend Jed Ross, where I know he's fully engaged. We've talked about this work, but my fellow director Jed and others, thank you for your work on this. And there's no reason why we can't get this done in the time frame that we have. So thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you, Director Wells. I think your point of saying that leading towards, pushing towards that legislation and regulatory agenda so that we could talk about next year's budget, I think that we're on track for that. So everyone's been working super hard. The action team committees are very engaged. The leadership from both DC Water and DOEE are it's just, I feel like it's like our full-time job because of so much interaction and engagement that we have as a group. So with that, everyone, want to thank you for your participation, your time. We want to give a little bit time back to you in the day, so you get about 27 minutes back. And we will engage with our next round, which is public listening sessions coming up. We have 2 of them. Don't forget, please promote them within your agencies or within your companies as appropriately done. They've been approved by the folks that need to approve them in the DC government, so there should be no problems getting that out. And then there were a couple of things that both Alan Prop and Meredith asked for some feedback on. If you all don't mind, please feeding back into that process. We need to get the IIJA competitive grants kind of teed up. And we also need to get some feedback on the action plan. And there was one other thing that Meredith mentioned. So please get back to those point of contacts for that information. Other than that, we'd like to say thank you. And we will see you in a couple of days now, I guess, for the public listening sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank
Monty.
you.
Thanks.